So far, we created a student model, which created a table in our Postgres database here. And we are querying our database. Where is it? With this line here. So we are grabbing all of our objects that are in our student table, student database, and then we are sending it to our index.html to be displayed. So now let's add a form, or we can just add some inputs and a button to add a student. So I'm going to start over here. I'm going to create input. I'm going to give an ID to the first name. How we put that in? Oops. Okay, so I'm going to give it an ID. I'm going to say type is when equal to text. And then what else do I need to do? I think that's it. Input. Okay. And then I'm going to create one for the email as well. Okay, so I'm going to create 3 inputs, and then I'm going to create a button. So last week we've seen using a form to trigger HTTP requests. So if I had a form around here and I created the action, which then goes to a URL that I have specified. So I'm going to show you a way today to do it through JavaScript. So I'm going to, after I set this up, I'm going to create a JavaScript file that will handle a button click, and then it will handle also, what is it called? It'll handle taking in the inputs. So I could still keep this in a form if I'd like. I'm going to create a button, and this button will have an on click. Oops, forgetting the syntax over here. On click, and then I'm just going to say add a student. Add student. But this is going to be a JavaScript, just to keep it consistent. Okay. So add student. I don't need to add those. Okay, so button on click, add student. I'm just going to call it add student and close out my button tag. Okay, so I'm setting up a form. On click, I am doing this. I can put this within a form as well, and then just create. Let's do it this way. Let's see if we can just do that. Okay, so let's check on our page. It would help if we have our server running. Let's start it. Okay. So here we're just displaying our information, and then we have 3 inputs. I'm gonna do a placeholder, or I can say value equals first name. I think Pretty sure placeholder is, yeah, there we go. First name, last name, and an email. Okay. There we go. And now when I click the button, I want to go to the other page that I have. So this means I will have to add a JavaScript script. So I'm gonna just add a header here. So for my source, I'm gonna need to do, I don't have it created yet, but I need to do static /JS. I'm just gonna put it in a static folder. So main.js or index.js, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so go in here, I create a folder called static. Right. Then I create a file called main.js. I'm going to do a console log just to check that everything is done. Okay, I am going to, I can create this later, but yeah, I'll create it later. Okay, so I created my JavaScript file here. I need to set it up to hook it up to my project, right? I need to go into my settings. I go down here. Do we remember what this is? Static dirs, I think. Let's look it up.
I think it's static files _ dirs.
Static files _ dirs equals, and then to list, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That was not what I wanted to do. Okay. List, and then here it's base directory / static, right? I believe. Oh, I forgot to open the chat. Okay, I believe this is it. So my main.js file should have been added. I have my script tag. I think I need to close it. I'm not sure. We'll see.
Yeah, I think you have to do the /script on the script tag.
Yeah, let's see if the console. Okay. There are some elements that are self-closing, so instead of having a closing tag here, you can just put a / at the end. But I don't think this is one. Okay. Okay, awesome. It's hooked up. So now I see the hello in my console. Okay, so I created a function that will be our onClick function. So I'm gonna go here and create a function called add student. And this will take an event. This isn't onClick. Oh, forgot. Not Python. Okay. I actually don't know if this will take an event, but let's see. So I'm going to first grab the information that I want to submit here. So I set the 3 IDs here. So I'm just going to grab those elements. Let me go back to my main.js. So I'm gonna get my first name, document dot get element by ID, and I gave it the ID of first name. Gonna do the same for the next two. So last, this is last name. This email. This is okay. So now we'll have access to our three pieces of information. And so how can we make our request to our views.py? So right now we're in the front end, right? How do we send the information that we want into our views so we can add a student? What do we have to do here?
Post.
Yeah.
A post, yeah, a post method. What library do I usually use in JavaScript? To make that happen, how do I make a post request?
In the notes it mentions Axios.
Axios, yep. So I'm gonna grab the Axios CDN so I can install it. Okay. It's a script tag, so I'm gonna need to put it in, in here at the top. This is another page that gives you a CDN. You can just grab one from here, or you can grab one from the actual Axios docs. They're gonna be the same. All right, so I added that. Now I can actually use Axios. Axios dot okay. So we've seen the dot get, and then we put the method. I can actually show you a different thing. So let me see. Axios post. So you put your URL and then you just send in the information that you want right after. So I'm going to post. I don't have a URL set up, but I will say it's going to be called student. And then I need to set that one up in a bit. Okay. And then I'm going to just send in the information. So I'm going to send in same information as we have. So first, I'm just going to call it first right now. First is first name. Last is last name. Email is email. Okay.
Do we need to get the values from those elements?
So these are the, oh, yes, thank you. I completely forgot about that. Okay, so to do that, I'm just gonna add the value, like dot value here. That way we have the information inside of our variables. Thank you for that. Good catch. And then dot value here. Oops. Okay, so we're grabbing our value. I am going to do the post request to a /student, sending in our information. I think this should be good. So let's just say after we receive whatever response comes back, I'm just gonna console log that response. So we've seen the dot then before. So I'm just gonna make it look a little prettier. Okay, so then we have our response. And we are going to pipe that into function, which will then we can just console log. Our response, okay. Okay, so now we have everything set up to send a request. Now we have to set up stuff to receive the request. So our first step will be to go into our URLs because we don't have a URL currently waiting to receive anything at students. So the /student doesn't exist yet. So I'm going to create one path. This is going to be student. And use dot add student. Okay. So let's see. We go into our add student in our views.py. And first, let's check that our method is post, because we don't really want to do anything if the method is not post. If we're just trying to get /student, that'll kind of be an issue because we're only wanting to add student. So we have to check for the post method, which, how do we do that?
Post has properties, doesn't it?
Yeah, so we have access to our request. So what's within our request that we can check?
Data.
There's a data. What else?
You should be able to just type post, right?
So that one will give us sorry. That one will give us to access to stuff to the data inside, but there's a method here. So if request.method equals post, then we can print out received. I'm just for sanity's sake, I'm gonna print our request method. So this is generally good practice to check that your method is correct, or it is what you want it to be. So I'm gonna try this. Add student is not defined, okay. Why is that?
Is that your on click?
Mhm.
You didn't close it out with parentheses.
Oh, let's check. HTML. Here, okay. Okay, so I got the hello. It made a post, but I got an issue. Okay, so it's saying that my CSRF token is missing. To get around that for now, I'm going to add what is it called? It's a decorator that kind of gets rid of that issue. So CSRF is there to make sure that we are protecting our data that is sent into our views. So from front end to the back end. So we'll talk more about that when we're talking about authentication and stuff like that, but or cookies and all that. But just right now I'm just gonna put CSRF exempt. I think I have to import it. I always forget which library or which folder it's in.
Should be Django views decorators CSRF.
Thank you. So from Django views decorators, oops. Caesar, there we go. Import Caesar exempt, there we go. And now the issue will go away. Okay, let's try that again. So I'm going to try adding a student. So now I'm getting a different error, which is fine. Let's see what error is going on. Okay, so first thing I look at this, it's telling me that my add student function did not return an HTTP response, which we already know that is a thing that happens. So not to worry. Okay, so we got here request.method printed out post with all caps. So I actually have to change this to post, which is good. A good reason why I printed this out here, because I wasn't sure. Okay, so we have to return something. So let's return a JSON response because we're returning it back to this JavaScript and we want to print it out. So let's just return something in a JSON response. So from Django.http import JSON response. And this is just one of the types of responses that you can return. We usually return an HTTP response if we want to return HTTP elements, but since we're returning to JavaScript, we can just return a JSON with some information. Maybe we can say success or something like that. Like we were able to add our student. So I'm going to return JSON response, and in here, I'm just going to send in some data, and that data, maybe I'll say status, or I'll just say status. Oops. Success. Okay. Now if I refresh, I'm adding, okay, so I sent data to the front end okay, actually, can someone tell me what happened here when I clicked this button and then I'm receiving here some information? Can you walk me through exactly what's happening? And I can switch screens for you. Anyone?
Is that where it's printing the request type?
No. So this is printing this. It's printing a response. So this means that we were able to grab information, send it to the backend, and then return a response and then print it out. So someone walk me through what is happening from this button click till this response print.
It's taking the input value from 3 fields, first name, last name, email. As soon as you click student, it calls the function in JavaScript. JavaScript starts the Axios post. Post sends the information to the backend at the port 8000, and then because it routes to the URL, right? And then it gets the response, which is just using the Axios headers.
So it goes. Yes, everything you said was correct. So I'm just going to reiterate what happened. We have our input here. We have our button. So when we put our information in here, we clicked we clicked our button to add our student, which invoked a JavaScript function. So we go in here. This function grabs our information, grabs our first name, last name, and email. It then calls Axios, and it's going to this URL, and it sends some information with it. So when we go to this URL, it goes to the urls.py to interpret the request. It needs to know where to go. So it sends that, it pushes that request over to the add student function in our views. So it goes in here, it takes the request. It's right now, we're not doing anything with the data yet, but we are printing the request method. And then if it's printing, if it is post, then we are saying it's received, which it should have said received. There we go. So it said received. And then we're sending back a JSON response with a status of success. Or this is our data that we're sending in. We're just saying that we have successfully done this. And then this is gonna be a response that is sent back to Axios because Axios made the request. It will go into our .then, so our response gets caught here, and then it's printed out and it shows over here. So if I look into the data, this is the status that I had set. There already is a status on the overall response, so I don't really need to set the status, but that was just something for me to add to see that I was able to send some information back. So, okay, let's grab the information from this post and actually add a student, because that's the whole point of this information, or of us doing this. So we get our data to, or we get to our post, or to this if statement, because we received a post request. So what do we do next? How can we access the
What do you
information?
want to do? What do you want to do? Sorry, I missed the question.
We want to grab the data from our post request here, and we want to then create a new student in our database. So our information or our data is going to be held in request.body. So I can do, so we saw before how the object from the request is kind of weird, so we can actually transform it into a JSON object. So I can import JSON. And here I can just say body equals JSON dot loads. And this will then, we will then take request dot body, and we will just transform it into a JSON object pretty much, so we can use it. So now if we, oops, body, hopefully we'll get some information. I'm gonna pull that again. There we go. So we received the information here and we were able to print it out. So now if we want to access the first name, last name, and email, we can just access it like a dictionary. So body, oops, body, square brackets, and then first. So this will give us the first name. If I change it to last, that will give us the last name that was sent in the request from the front end. So this is the information that we sent. Okay, so let us grab the information. So I can grab the information one by one, but I can also just put it all into the line that creates the student. So Can someone remind me, how do I create a new student?
To create an instance of the class of the model student.
Okay, so I'm gonna create a variable just to call it new student. And I'm gonna just call the class to instantiate a new student. So student has 3 fields. First name equals something. Last name equals something, and then email equals something. What do I put here?
Yes,
What is it?
That
you
can
put
be
the
blocked
first
out.
name.
Yeah, how do I access the first name?
Through the
With the
JSON.
body,
So, yeah.
Okay, body,
bracket, first name,
and then
or first object.
exactly. Because I didn't, yeah, I only called it first instead of first name. So, and then for my last name, it's gonna be last. For the email, it will be email. Okay, so this will create an instance of my new student. And then I can say new student, what, dot what? Does anyone remember?
Save.
Save.
Yep, dot save. This will add it to my database. And then I can return whatever I want. I can return my new student if I wanted to. So in here, I can just say, new student. This will equal to my new student. And that's just going to be in the response. Okay, let's test it out. So I'm going to refresh. I'm going to add Zainab. Okay. We got an error. Let's see. We got an internal server error. So when we get this, we want to go check our terminal here. Okay. Object of type student is not JSON serializable. So I'm not able to send this student through this way, because when I created a new student, it created a type of object that is not easily converted to JSON. So let me try doing the JSON dot. I always forget the difference between load and loads, but let's try this if it works. If not, I'll just send like the name or something. Okay, so it created a new object, but it wasn't able to send the response back because the error happened here. But it went through all of this information, which means that the student was added to the table, which is pretty cool. And if I select star, I see my new entry is in my database. Let's add another person. I'm gonna add student. That also caused an error. Okay, so I will figure out a better way to send the student information. I can just say maybe that first name. I can just send in the student's first name as a way of confirming that I've achieved what I wanted to do. So let me refresh. So we got our new added person. It's gonna type something random. We got our response back, and in the data we have the new student, and that was the first name that I gave that student. Okay.
Would it be better to, instead of just doing it on that render, to just make a dictionary above it and then send in the dictionary to the render? of like first name, last name and all that if you're wanting to just print it there to the console? Would that work?
For here, like to print out this information, you mean? Or
No, just how you were wanting to print it to your console in here.
Uh-huh.
To this data, would
Yeah.
that be a viable way since it's not doing the JSON correctly? Does that make sense?
to
So like instead
then
of doing,
render.
oh, and that, yeah, inside, not your render, sorry, inside your response there,
Uh-huh.
above it, could you just make a dictionary and, you know, give it a
Yeah.
name and then,
That would, yep, that would work.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I was trying to find like a quick solution. to-
yeah,
But yeah,
I was making.
no, I
sure.
agree, that would work. But yeah, someone's mentioning the Django serializer, and I think that would work. I forget the syntax for that one, so yeah. Questions about this? I'm gonna run through one more time of what is happening here. So we go to our index.html, we have a list of our students, and then we have a place where we can add a new student. So if I want to add a new student here, and I want to add, I don't know, email, so I can click on this button. So this button here then calls the add student function because that's the onClick method that I have created. I'm grabbing the information from my input elements, and then I'm making an Axios call to my backend to add this student's information that I had just grabbed. So
I have a question about that function though. The event that you put as a variable, do we need it?
we do not right now. So if this was a form and this was a submit, I would want to do events dot prevent default. I forgot so this will prevent the page from automatically refreshing because that's the default behavior when I submit a form. But since I don't have a form right now, it's not automatically refreshing the page, which is fine. Okay, so I'm making an Axios call to the backend, and I'm making a post request with the information that I had grabbed from my user interface, and I'm going to send it to this URL. So this URL here is being interpreted by this add student function. We go into add student. We are checking if the method is equal to post. If so, we want to grab the information that we have. So we're grabbing the body information, and then we are creating a new student with that information that we had received. We are saving it to the database, and then we are returning a JSON response with the new student's name. And so this response is going to go back to our JavaScript file into our .then. So our response is caught by this .then method, which then prints out the response into the console. And it's over here. So one thing you might have noticed is that when I add a student, the page does not refresh, so I don't get the new information. That I will leave you to play around with and figure out a way. It can be done in multiple ways. But yeah. Questions?
Where is that dot body coming from?
Dot bodies coming from our request. So when we had sent our requests over here, our data gets put into the body of the request. If you remember the anatomy of an HTTP request, you have a header and then you have a body, and our request here also has like a method, it has a header, and it has a body. So we can access the information inside the body through this. And this JSON.loads just takes that body and it puts it into an object that we're able to easily access information from. So we can just say body at first. Other questions?